What would you do if you discovered that the person you trusted the most, the one you had spent countless years with, was hiding a devastating secret? Sophia believed her life was as perfect as it could be, until one Thanksgiving dinner shattered everything she knew. A betrayal so profound, it forced her to make a choice that would change her life forever. Imagine standing in her shoes. Would you face the painful truth head-on or try to ignore it? Let us know where you're tuning in from and share your thoughts. What would you do if you were in Sophia's place? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of this gripping journey. Your perspective matters, it might even help someone else. Sophia Thompson had always thought of herself as fortunate. She had a caring husband, David, a home filled with the sounds of their children growing up, and a marriage that, from the outside, seemed to have stood the test of time. They had been together for 18 years, and their life appeared to be the embodiment of stability. In their small town, they were known as the perfect couple, the pair everyone looked to as a model of happiness. Thanksgiving was a particularly cherished time for their family. The air was always filled with the delicious aromas of roasted turkey, simmering cranberry sauce, and freshly baked pumpkin pie. Their children ran through the house with excitement, eagerly awaiting the family traditions they treasured every year. It was the one time of year when everyone gathered together. David's brother, Mark, and his wife, Rachel, were always part of the celebration. Sophia loved these moments, the closeness of family, and the chance to count their blessings together. But this year, something was off. It was hard to put her finger on it, but a strange feeling had started to creep into her thoughts. In the weeks leading up to Thanksgiving, David had seemed more distant. It wasn't anything overtly suspicious at first, just a series of small, unsettling moments that made her uneasy. He had been working longer hours, coming home late more often, and when he was home, he felt absent. At first, she dismissed it. After all, they had been married for nearly 2 decades. He was a good man, a devoted father. Why would she question his loyalty? But deep inside, something was changing. A quiet voice of doubt grew louder, until it was impossible to ignore. The day before Thanksgiving, as she was preparing for the evening, Sophia noticed David and Rachel speaking outside by the kitchen window. At first, it appeared to be just a casual chat between friends. Rachel had been part of their family gatherings for years, always around for the holidays, but there was something in the way they stood close to each other, their bodies leaning in just a bit too much, their smiles a little too intimate. Rachel's laugh, soft and lingering, seemed too personal for what was meant to be a simple exchange. Sophia tried to shake it off, but the unsettling feeling remained, gnawing at her mind. Sophia watched them from behind the lace curtains, her pulse quickening as the realization settled in. Why hadn't she noticed it before? She had always trusted both David and Rachel, but now something felt wrong. Then, as she entered their bedroom to tidy up before their guests arrived, her eyes landed on the phone. David's phone. It was resting on the nightstand where he usually left it. She picked it up to charge it, and as she did, the screen lit up. A message preview appeared, and her heart sank. It was a text from Rachel, reading, "I can't wait to see you tonight. I miss you." Her hands trembled as she quickly set the phone back down, trying to keep herself composed. Sophia closed her eyes, her mind racing. She didn't want to believe it. David wasn't the kind of man who would betray her, was he? He was the one she had built her entire life with. But the evidence was clear, there was no denying it now. The connection between David and Rachel had always seemed close, but now it felt like something deeper. Something hidden. And Sophia realized, with a heavy heart, that she couldn't ignore it any longer. Thanksgiving dinner, once a time of joy, now loomed just hours away, and the weight of everything felt unbearable. Sophia wasn't ready to confront David yet. She needed to be sure, but a quiet voice in the back of her mind told her that her life had shifted, and she was no longer in control of it. She needed answers. And she needed them before the evening was over. As the day went on, the house filled with the usual flurry of holiday preparations. Sophia moved mechanically, setting the table, peeling vegetables, making sure everything was in place for their guests. But her gut told her something was wrong. She couldn't shake the feeling. David walked in, his smile forced, his kiss on her cheek quick and absent. He asked about the kids, his tone light, but there was something off in the way he carried himself. His eyes were unfocused, distant, and when he reached for the wine glasses, his hands shook slightly. Sophia noticed everything, the signs she had been too afraid to see before. "Everything okay?" she asked, trying to sound casual, though her heart hammered in her chest. "Yeah, just a lot going on," David replied, his words clipped, his voice betraying a hint of impatience. He didn't meet her gaze as he spoke, instead focusing on the wine glass in his hand. Sophia nodded, offering a forced smile, but inside, she felt the tension rise in her chest. This wasn't just work stress. She had seen David go through stressful times before, but never like this, so distant, so cold. As she watched him, it felt like a stranger was standing before her, not the man she had known so well. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of their guests. The usual excitement that filled the house was absent. And Sophia had to force herself to push her growing unease aside for the sake of the holiday. The children ran to greet their aunt and uncle, but Sophia's focus kept returning to David, watching his every interaction with Rachel. They were laughing too freely, touching each other too casually. Their proximity made Sophia feel like an outsider in her own home. Rachel had always been close to the family, but tonight she felt like an intruder. Her laughter seemed hollow, like a mask for something darker that lurked just beneath the surface. And as David shared another laugh with Rachel, Sophia saw it, the same intimate glance exchanged between them, a look that wasn't meant for anyone else to see. It wasn't just the obvious closeness, it was the way their eyes lingered when they thought no one was watching, the way Rachel brushed David's arm, the way his gaze followed her just a moment too long. There was something more between them, something that went beyond simple friendship. Sophia's stomach turned, but she forced herself to maintain her composure, playing the part of the perfect hostess. Dinner was served, but the tension in the air was suffocating. Sophia could hardly taste the food on her plate. The conversation around the table felt distant, as if she were watching from afar. David was too focused on his phone, glancing at it over and over again. Rachel kept stealing glances at David, her smile a bit too bright, her voice too soft. Everything about it felt wrong to Sophia. A pressure began to build in her chest, growing tighter with each passing moment. Sophia wanted to confront David, to demand the truth right there, but the timing wasn't right. She knew she had to be careful, there was too much at stake, too many people around that it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the friends and family, the people who had no idea what was happening beneath the surface. As the evening dragged on, Sophia couldn't ignore the way David and Rachel kept exchanging quiet glances. They were like two people caught in their own secret world, a world that didn't include her. Every laugh, every whisper between them felt like a betrayal. She could hear the sound of their children's laughter in the background, but it seemed distant, as though it came from another world entirely. This house had been her home for years, but tonight it felt foreign. She felt like a stranger in her own life. The man she had trusted above all others, the man she had built everything with, was slipping away from her. And Rachel, the woman who had once been her friend, her confidant, was now the face of everything she had lost. The conversations around the table grew quieter as the night wore on. Sophia's mind, however, wasn't in the room. It raced with questions about David and Rachel. How long had this been going on? Had she been living in a dream, completely blind to the lies around her? Her gaze drifted back to David, sitting across the table, laughing with Mark. But there was something wrong. His smile didn't reach his eyes. He was pretending, playing a part. Rachel, too, seemed too calm, too composed. They both acted as if this moment had been rehearsed, their smiles and words carefully crafted. But beneath it all, Sophia could sense the unspoken tension between them. She could see it in their eyes, the way they avoided looking at her for too long, the way David shifted his focus every time she asked him a simple question. Dinner ended, and everyone moved to the living room, the crackling fire casting a warm glow. The children ran off to play, leaving the adults in the dimly lit room. Sophia, feeling the weight of the air around her, excused herself. She needed a moment alone, a chance to clear her head. As she entered the kitchen, something caught her eye, a small, folded note tucked beneath a pile of napkins on the counter. It looked out of place, almost like it had been deliberately hidden there. Curiosity piqued, Sophia reached for it. Her hands shook as she unfolded the note, reading the words in familiar handwriting. It was a message from David to Rachel, and her heart sank with each word. "I can't stop thinking about you. I miss the way we used to be. I need you now more than ever." The room spun as she processed what she had just read. There was no denying it anymore. The affair wasn't just a figment of her imagination or the product of her insecurities, it was real. Her husband, the man she had shared her life with, had been lying to her. And Rachel, the woman she had trusted, had become the source of her deepest betrayal. Her knees grew weak, and she leaned against the counter for support. The note felt like it was burning her hands, each word a brutal reminder of everything she had lost. She had trusted David. He was the father of her children, the man she had built a life with. And Rachel, her sister-in-law, her friend, the woman she had confided in, had betrayed her in the worst possible way. How had she been so blind? Her mind was a whirlwind of anger, disbelief, and sorrow. This wasn't just about an affair. It was about everything, the trust she had placed in both of them, the foundation of her marriage, and how it had all crumbled without her ever seeing it coming. Rachel had been the person she confided in, the one she trusted with her deepest thoughts, and now that very person had shattered her heart. And now, the truth was undeniable. She could no longer ignore it. The small signs she had once brushed aside, the phone messages, the secretive glances, the intimacy between David and Rachel, were now pieces of a puzzle she couldn't escape from. Sophia crumpled the note in her hand. She was done with pretending. Done with living in a cloud of uncertainty. She had the proof now, the undeniable truth. But as the weight of it all sank in, something deeper stirred within her. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. This was about reclaiming her life. Her sense of self. She couldn't keep living in a marriage built on lies. Sophia knew what she had to do. The confrontation wouldn't just be about exposing David's betrayal, it would be about taking back control of her life. She couldn't let this destroy her. She wouldn't. She took a deep breath, standing taller. Her gaze lingered on the crumpled note, before she tossed it into the trash. There was no turning back now. The evening wasn't over. And neither was the storm that was about to break. Sophia returned to the living room, her thoughts clouded by the note in her pocket. She knew now that nothing would ever be the same again. Sophia forced a smile as she rejoined the group, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. But every conversation felt hollow. David continued chatting with Mark and Rachel, completely unaware of the storm swirling in her mind. Her composure was slipping, but she clung to it, the weight of the truth bearing down on her. Every glance at David made her stomach twist. She couldn't look at him without seeing the man who had betrayed her. Every laugh from Rachel, every word that passed between them, felt like a knife twisting in her chest. The children played in the background, blissfully unaware of the tension suffocating the adults. Sophia's eyes met David's for a moment, but he quickly looked away, returning to his conversation as if nothing had changed. There was no warmth in his gaze anymore, only a cold indifference that felt like a chasm between them. His body language was tight, his eyes flicking nervously to his phone, a casual gesture that now seemed loaded with guilt. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt suffocating. Sophia was trapped in a nightmare she hadn't asked for, watching the man she loved slip further away from her. Her mind raced, replaying every moment, every glance that had seemed off. She wanted to confront him. She wanted to expose him, to drag the truth into the light. But part of her hesitated. Rachel was sitting there, so close, pretending to be part of the family. Sophia's fists clenched, her nails digging into her palms as she fought to hold herself together. It wasn't just David who had betrayed her. It was Rachel, too. The woman who had shared countless holidays with her, laughed at the kitchen table, and celebrated family milestones. Rachel had known all along. She had played the role of the supportive sister-in-law while secretly taking Sophia's place in David's heart. Sophia couldn't keep pretending. She couldn't let this continue any longer. The dinner table, once a symbol of family unity, now felt like a stage for their lies. The performance was over. Sophia had been sitting there, emotions swirling inside her, for what felt like hours. It was time. The truth had simmered beneath the surface for long enough. She could no longer live in this lie. It wasn't just about David anymore. It was about her, her dignity, her future. If she let this betrayal go unchallenged, if she allowed David and Rachel to continue their charade, she would lose herself in the process. She stood up from the couch, and the room fell silent. Every eye turned to her, the tension thick in the air. It was as if everyone sensed that something was about to shift, that the calm facade she'd held so carefully was about to crumble. David glanced up from his phone, confusion crossing his face as he took in her stance. He had no idea what was coming. Rachel's smile faltered for a split second, but she quickly recovered, her eyes darting nervously between Sophia and David. "I need to talk to you, David," Sophia said, her voice steady but firm, her eyes locking with his. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she showed no trace of it. This was no longer about anger, it was about taking control. David stiffened, narrowing his eyes in confusion. He put his phone down on the coffee table, but there was a flicker of something deeper in his gaze, guilt, maybe, or recognition that the moment of reckoning had arrived. Rachel shifted uncomfortably beside him, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Sophia's voice didn't waver. "I know about the affair." The words cut through the room like a blade. The truth was out in the open now, and there was no need to shout. Her calmness only made the accusation heavier. David's face drained of color. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He was trapped in the truth he had hidden for so long. Sophia turned her gaze to Rachel, cold and unwavering. "I know about you too. All the time you spent with him, the secrets you shared, the lies you both told me." Rachel went pale, her expression cracking for the first time. The woman who had once been her confidant, the one who had shared her life with Sophia, was now a stranger. There was no apology in Rachel's eyes, no remorse, only fear, guilt, and a trace of shame. The room hung in silence, thick with the weight of the revelation. Sophia's pulse raced, but she stood firm. She had already been deceived. Now, she was reclaiming the truth. "This isn't just about confronting David," she said, her voice now tinged with resolve. "This is about confronting the betrayal that has torn my world apart." The silence stretched on, and Sophia knew nothing would ever be the same again. David's eyes were on her, filled with shock, guilt, and disbelief. He opened his mouth but the words seemed to fail him, as though he was grasping for something, anything, to explain away his actions. Rachel sat frozen, her face drained of color, her hands tightly clasped in her lap. There was no escape from this moment, no way to twist the truth. The damage had been done. Sophia's heart thundered in her chest, but she remained calm. She wasn't the woman who had been deceived anymore. She was the woman who had uncovered the lies and reclaimed her power. "David," she said again, her voice clear and firm, "you've been living a lie. So has Rachel." David's eyes flickered to Rachel, and for the first time. He seemed to understand the full magnitude of what he had done. Guilt flashed across his face, but it did nothing to undo the years of trust that had been shattered. "I didn't mean for this to happen," David stammered, his voice cracking. He stood and began pacing, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I never wanted to hurt you, Sophia. This isn't what I planned." "Don't you dare try to justify this," Sophia cut him off, her voice like steel. "You chose this, David. You chose her. You chose to lie to me, to betray me. You made that choice every time you snuck away from our home, every time you kissed her, every time you kept secrets from me." Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. No more crying. Not for him. Not for this betrayal. She had to hold on to her strength now. "I trusted you," she said, her voice breaking, but only just. The words held more weight than anything else she could say. "I trusted you both," Sophia said, her voice trembling but steady as she turned to Rachel, who couldn't meet her gaze. Rachel shrank under the weight of Sophia's words, her body stiffening, her face drained of color. "You were my friend," Sophia continued, her eyes burning with the intensity of her hurt. "You were family. And you both betrayed me in the worst way possible." The anger that had been simmering inside her finally surged, but it wasn't rage directed outward. It wasn't about revenge. No, this was something deeper. Something more important, the need to reclaim control, to take back the life that had been stolen from her. She had been played for a fool, but not anymore. "I'm done," she whispered, the words raw with emotion but her resolve unshaken. "You both will have to face the consequences of your actions. I won't be part of this anymore." The room was thick with tension. The silence that followed her words felt suffocating, heavy with the weight of everything that had just been revealed. But Sophia refused to let it consume her. She couldn't. Not anymore. The man she had spent years with, the man who had been her partner, was now a stranger. The trust she had given him was shattered beyond repair. And Rachel, her own sister-in-law, someone she had trusted with her heart, was now the enemy. David stood there, his shoulders slumped as the full weight of the truth crashed down on him. There were no more excuses, no more lies. The reality of his betrayal was settling over him like a suffocating blanket. But Sophia couldn't bring herself to feel sorry for him. Not now. "I'll leave," David muttered, his voice thick with guilt. "I'll move out. Just don't." "You've already done enough," Sophia snapped, cutting him off. "It's too late for apologies, David. It's too late for excuses. You've broken something that can never be fixed." Turning to Rachel, she felt the fury build again, colder this time, more dangerous. "You can't hide behind him anymore. You've betrayed me too," she said. Her voice a mask of cold fury. "And there's nothing left to say." Sophia felt the chill of the room settle deep into her bones. But it didn't frighten her. It was the same coldness that had taken root in her heart. The same coldness that would keep her strong through the storm that was coming. The finality of the moment slammed into her like a door closing on the life she'd once known. "I want you both to leave. Now," Sophia said, her voice steady, unwavering. There was no hint of doubt in her tone. "This is my house. You no longer have a place in it. I'm done with you both." David's face went pale. He froze for a moment, eyes wide as though searching for some way to fix things, but there was no fixing this. It was too broken. Too far gone. Rachel stood, her face ashen, the weight of her betrayal finally registering on her face. Without a word, David turned and walked toward the door. Rachel hesitated, but then followed, the sound of the door closing behind them echoing in the silence like the end of something that had been dying for a long time. Sophia stood there, her heart still racing, but there was a growing clarity in her chest. She had done it. She had taken back control. And for the first time in years, she felt the flicker of something new inside her, freedom. The house, once full of laughter and life, now felt empty. The weight of betrayal hung in the air, but beneath it, something stronger was rising, something far more powerful than the pain or anger. It was the power to take back her life. She had done what she needed to do, not just for her marriage, but for herself. The house felt eerily quiet now, the sound of the door closing behind David and Rachel still reverberating in her mind. They were gone. And with them, the lies, the hurt, and the uncertainty that had clouded her life for too long. Sophia's hands trembled as she sank slowly into the couch. Her eyes were fixed on the door, but her thoughts were elsewhere. The weight of the moment had yet to fully settle in, but she knew she had just taken a huge step toward reclaiming her life. The children were still playing in the other room, unaware of the devastation that had just torn their family apart. But Sophia would have to face them. She'd need to explain. They didn't deserve the pain of this betrayal, but Sophia knew that the truth had to be a part of their future. There would be no more hiding behind a facade of a perfect family. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She'd expected the call or message. Her family, her friends, they would all know soon enough. The fallout was inevitable. But for now, Sophia wasn't ready to deal with the well-meaning sympathy or concerned messages. She put the phone down and closed her eyes for a moment, letting the reality of her new life sink in. David was gone. Rachel was gone. And now, for the first time in years, she had to face the future alone. But as sadness and loss tried to engulf her, she pushed them aside. She was stronger than that. She had to be. The next steps wouldn't be easy. Divorce papers, custody arrangements, the inevitable legal battles. But Sophia realized that none of that mattered as much as the moment she had just experienced. She had taken control. The weight of their betrayal still burned, but it no longer defined her. She had stood up for herself. That was something David and Rachel could never take away. In the days following David and Rachel's departure, the emotional roller coaster was relentless. The initial relief, freedom, soon gave way to something quieter, grief. The house, once full of life, felt cold and unfamiliar. It wasn't just the emptiness they left behind. It was the realization that the life she had built had been built on lies. She spent the next few days going through the motions, packing up David's things, sorting through memories that no longer had meaning. She stayed busy, not allowing herself to dwell on the pain. Healing wouldn't be a straight line. But as she moved through the house, touching familiar items that had once brought comfort, she realized something. She didn't need David to complete her. She didn't need Rachel either. She had her children. She had her friends. And most importantly, she had a quiet strength that had always been there, buried beneath the pain. They would help her rebuild. They would help her find her way through this. The house, once full of ghosts, memories of laughter, trust, and love, slowly began to transform. Sophia rearranged the furniture, put up pictures of her children, added little touches that made the space feel like her own again. She reached out to old friends, reconnecting with the people who had always supported her. They were her new support system, the ones who would help her move forward. She spent more time with her children, no longer as a wife holding on to an illusion of a perfect family, but as a mother who had faced the storm and survived. Her children could see the change. They noticed how her smile was brighter, how her laughter felt more genuine. They saw a woman healing. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Divorce, legal battles, emotional healing, it would take time. But for the first time in a long while, Sophia knew she was on the right path. She wasn't just surviving. She was thriving. And though the hurt of betrayal would always linger, it no longer controlled her. She had taken back control of her life. Sophia had been through the worst kind of betrayal, but by standing up for herself, she began to rebuild her life. The hurt and anger still stung, but she was no longer defined by them. She didn't need David or Rachel to find her strength, she had her kids, her friends, and a quiet power inside her. Slowly, she turned her home back into a place for herself, for healing. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time in a long while, Sophia was in control, and that made all the difference. Thank you all so much for watching and being part of this journey. We hope you found this story engaging and thought-provoking. Please remember, this is purely for content and entertainment purposes. It's meant to explore emotions, conflicts, and personal growth in a fictional setting. Your time and attention mean a lot, and we appreciate your support. Stay tuned for more, and take care.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more